How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the 1IQ Sports YouTube channel. Brendan and Sterling coming back with our Week 5 game predictions. We had already made our Thursday night predictions for the Bucks Falcons, so please make sure to go and watch that video. But first game coming up here on the schedule is the Minnesota Vikings taking on the New York Jets over in foggy old London town.
Yeah. First game of the UK series for the season starts off this week, and from what I hear, it's supposed to be a rainy, gross day, which we saw how well the Jets did in the rain last week. So I'm not too confident in them this week. You know, you got the Vikings who are 4-0, looking like one of the best teams in the league right now.
Yeah, and this Vikings team, that defense is just things of nightmares. Like both of our teams, like the Bears and Steelers, have really, really good defenses. Like they stop a lot, but this Vikings team, they go out there and like they are literally the boogeyman. They might give up a few plays here and there, but they are terrifying to look at and go against. And so these are, two teams that again, this Jets offense hasn't been going the way that we necessarily thought it would be at this point. And this Vikings offense is doing worlds better than we ever gave them credit for potentially ever being able to do here at this stage of the season. The game spread is minus 2.5 points for the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, I think the Jets are probably happy that this isn't in New York because Sam Darnold might just be on a bit of a vengeance tour against them. You know, he was a third overall pick, I do believe, by them
Third
years
overall
back,
pick.
and
Yep.
yeah, is now leading the opposition. And honestly, like you said, that defense is so good. I'm at the point where I don't want to bet against them just just yet. So I'm gonna pick the Vikings to win this game. And they're favored, I believe, is what
Minus
you said with the spread.
2.5. Yep.
Yeah. I think they cover that spread too.
Yeah, I think right now the Jets, they've just been too up and down this season. Just a lot of kind of roller coaster of emotions. Again, we thought going up against the Broncos last week that was going to be their game of just like, all right, we're just going to have fun with this one. We're going to kind of walk out there and just do what we need to do after kind of doing what they needed to do against the Patriots. It was going to be that kind of 2 week stretch of just kind of getting things going and getting things right. But ultimately, I have to agree with you. I think the Vikings right now, their defense is terrifying. Their offense is playing really, really well. I think Vikings win this, and I think they cover that spread. Next game up on our schedule here is my Chicago Bears at home taking on the Carolina Panthers. And the Bears are minus 4 point favorites.
Yeah, I mean, since the benching of Bryce Young, the Panthers have looked better. I expected this spread to be a lot bigger back when Bryce Young was still the starter because I thought this was just going to be a total destruction by the Bears. I do still think the Bears are going to wipe the floor with the Panthers, but with Andy Dalton in there, they seem to be,
Competent.
yeah, they're putting points on the board. And so I think they'll be able to, score a few against the Bears to keep it somewhat interesting, but I do think the Bears will eventually run away with this. We're starting to see that connection that Caleb's getting a little more comfortable, Caleb Williams back there, and he's starting to connect with some of these wide receivers. It's only a matter of time before it's DJ Moore he makes that connection with. And this would be a really good week for that to kick off and have DJ Moore just have a massive week against the Panthers.
Yeah, I think right now Andy Dalton has gone up against the Raiders defense and they didn't really play that well. I don't think I've been saying going into this year that, people are saying this Raiders defense was going to be a lot better. I said let's kind of pump the brakes on that. They have, two really really good players on their defensive line and then everything else is kind of patchwork. Then went up against the worst defense in the NFL in the Bengals last week. They were able to put up some points, but this is the Bears where if you go to 1 and 2 in the defensive ranks, it goes to Steelers, then it goes to the Bears. This is a
Hmm.
different unit, and a bunch of the Bears players are talking about going up against the Red Rifle because again, a lot of them played with him when he was here a few years ago. I think Caleb, again, like what you're saying, is getting more and more comfortable. I think again, finally unlocking DeAndre Swift and playing him almost similar to a Matt Forte type of a role, which was kind of what I was asking for when they signed him. And if you can continue to do those sort of things, then I think this Bears team is just going to absolutely kind of walk the floor with this. I think Bears win. I think they cover that spread.
Yeah, I agree. Bears win. They cover that spread easily.
Next up, speaking of the Cincinnati Bengals, they are taking on the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, big AFC North matchup. You know, Baltimore is they've turned it around after that 0-2 start. They were looking shaky, and last week they absolutely demolished the Bills. If they keep running it with Derrick Henry the way they were last week, this Ravens team is going to be next to unstoppable. And that Bengals defense is Swiss cheese. It it's going to be a rough day. I think the Bengals are going to have to find a way to put up 40 plus points just to have a chance at winning against this Ravens team, because if they every time they score, the Ravens are going to go back down there and do that. Because the Ravens defense isn't that great either. So I do expect it to be pretty high scoring. Kyle Hamilton is a bit of a game breaker though, so I expect to see him watching and spying Joe Burrow a lot. I wouldn't be surprised to see him come away with either a pick or a sack at some point throughout this game. He's going to get after Joe Burrow, though. Ravens will win this game, and
Point spread is -2.5 for
yeah,
Baltimore.
they'll cover that spread. It'll be probably a field goal difference game.
Yeah, I think this is a game of kind of two poor defenses, and it's just going to be who can kind of lock in a little bit better on the offense side of the ball. I do think the Ravens have a bit better of a defense than the Bengals. What a fall off from what we saw from that defense from last year. Then again, having, a bunch of your staff go and a handful of your players, it's going to be a tough one for the Bengals to potentially try to do something in this game. And in terms of the defense, because again, Derrick Henry, the Ravens figured it out. It was, we run the ball to Derrick Henry and we win the game. And now that it's been kind of 2 weeks of this system, it's I don't know how the Bengals are going to stop that. Now on the opposite side of the ball, I don't know how the Ravens are going to stop Jamar Chase.
Hmm.
And like that's a big problem, and Joe Burrow is playing still pretty well right now. So, but yeah, I agree. This game, I just look at this and go, the Ravens have that slightly better defense. They'll be able to kind of control it a little bit more, and it's going to be a high scoring game because I still think the Bengals will put up points, but ultimately the Ravens will win, and I think they will cover that spread. Moving over to what I think we are going to call the Toilet Bowl game of the week, where we have the Miami Dolphins taking on the New England Patriots. Miami is -1 point favorites in this one.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't expect to be saying that about a Dolphins team coming into this season, but they have no idea what to do at quarterback without Tua, and it shows.
Yep.
It's been a couple weeks of struggles now. Skylar Thompson and then Snoop Huntley last week. It just didn't work out. They got to find a way to get the run game going. Achane, Mostert, you're going up against a Patriots team that is not good at all. We saw the Jets sort of have a bit of a get right game against the Patriots. I think this is what the Dolphins need to do. They need to figure out a way that they can move the ball and score some points. And this is the team to do it against, because this is going to be the easiest test. And so finding what's going to work and then honing it in the coming weeks is really going to be key for this team to even think about hanging in this division throughout the rest of the season. I do think the Dolphins will win. 1 point spread, it's hard to ever pick that. And so I do think the Dolphins will cover that. I don't think it'll be a high scoring game, though.
Yeah, this game has all the markings of like a, 16-10 type game. Jacoby Brissett is not been good for the Patriots. That Patriots offensive line is bad. Basically, the Patriots are the Patriots of what we expected them to be this year. And Miami, ever since losing Tua, I could have easily said that the Dolphins could have been 3-1 right now with that lone loss to the Bills, winning every other game if Tua was healthy. But
Mhm.
right now, it just seems like they just don't quite have it going. Maybe Tyler Huntley, with another week under his belt, under the system, is going to be able to connect with Tyreek Hill and Devon Achane and the rest of the Miami Dolphins weapons. It's one of those things where I'm happy I don't have to watch this game, because this would be a very tough watch. But yeah, I think the Dolphins win, and that 1 point spread, I think the Dolphins win probably by 3 or 4. But yeah, I'm taking the Fins on the spread for that one. Moving over to the Cleveland Browns taking on the Washington Commanders, where the Commanders are minus 3 point favorites.
Yeah, I mean the Browns have not been very inspiring on either side of the ball this year. This defense, they look like they're still tired from last season. I said it last week, and they're just not able to do enough to keep this altering offense in the game. And you look at Jaden Daniels and the Commanders, they've been lighting it up. I mean, how many quarters have they played without punting the ball? You know,
Yeah.
it's Jaden Daniels. It's you put the ball in his hands at this point, and he's going to put a touchdown on the board. You know, I know they're struggling with some Brian Robinson Jr. issues, but Austin Eckler's set to come back, and he has been looking great. I don't, I don't know, man. This Commanders team, we thought it was going to be 2 or 3 years, but they might have caught that spark just right now and might kind of be the Houston Texans of this year where they're going to do good. The problem is their defense isn't great. And so I don't know. I'm going to pick the Commanders to win this one and cover the spread. But Nick Chubb's able to practice again. Maybe the Browns might have something in a couple weeks. For now, I don't think they're going to have enough to go against this Commanders team.
Yeah, I will have a lot more to say about my true thoughts on what this Commanders team is in the actual podcast that we will be releasing on Monday afternoon. So make sure you stick around and you check that out when it comes out. But with this Commanders team right now, what they're doing is they're just moving the ball incredibly efficiently on offense. That defense is atrocious, but when your offense is putting up 35 plus points a game, you can feel pretty comfortable with what your defense is doing. As long as you can hold the opponents under 30, you have a chance to win, which is an insane thought to say out loud. And this Browns team has just been horrible. They had an opportunity to have what should have been a decently easy win against the Raiders last week, where they were missing both Max Crosby and Devonte Adams, and they just couldn't get it done. So I'm taking Commanders, and I'm taking them on the point spread as well. Jacksonville Jaguars 0-4 take on the Colts, and the Jaguars are minus 3 point favorites.
Yeah, I mean, they got to get it right at some point. You know, and I think they're got to be looking at it going, we're going over to Europe pretty soon. We've got to get a win here before we go over there. You know, this is probably their best chance against this Colts team who doesn't have the best of defenses. And so this was a tough one for me to pick because I don't really have a whole lot of faith in either team. I just think the Jags have to pull a win out at some point here. And so I think this is the week that the Jags win. You know, I can't pinpoint a reason as to why.
You just kind of have that gut feeling. Yeah.
You know, at some point, I don't see the Jags going 0-5 and then traveling over to the UK. I feel like they're going to pull a win at some point.
And what do you feel about the spread as well?
I think they'll cover that spread. Once they start to run away with it'll still be close. It'll be less than 7, obviously, but 3 point spread. I don't know if it'll be within that field goal.
For me, in this game, I just look at the Colts and go, we saw exactly what this Colts team could do with Joe Flacco in as quarterback, and he did that against a really, really good defense in the Pittsburgh Steelers. Again, beating your Steelers, beating my Bears the week before, but Joe Flacco didn't do that. But it's one of those things. The Jags don't have that defense, and we know what Joe Flacco can do. We've seen it over these last 8 games when going back to Cleveland last year. And I genuinely think this Jags team, they have a lot of issues, and the Colts have always been kind of my AFC team. I hate the guy who sings the Colts song. I just saw his week 5 thing and I wanted to punch my monitor because he just bugs the hell out of me. Really don't like that dude. Um, I don't have any other reason than I just don't like him. But I think the Colts with Joe Flacco, I think they will be able to pull out this win this week. And I think there's a strong possibility that we could see the Jags coming back to North America with potentially a new head coach or an interim head coach because it's not like their matchup first game in England is going to be an easy matchup. And
Yep.
so I just think the Colts are going to cover this one, so obviously I think they're going to cover that spread as well. Bills taking on the Houston Texans. This is going to be a phenomenal game. Houston Texans are -1 point favorites.
Yeah, I think this is probably going to be the best game in the early window tomorrow. We got two good teams. The Bills just got dummied by the Ravens last week, so they're going to be looking to bounce back, and we know Josh Allen is capable of that. Meanwhile, the Texans, they got Stephon Diggs, and we've seen what Diggs does usually when he's going up against a former team the first time after leaving, and he usually puts up pretty good numbers.
He's petty
And
like that.
so, right? And so I kind of expect this to be the week where we see a little bit more Stephon Diggs than Nico Collins. But at the same time, I don't think that means we see less Nico Collins. I think it just means Diggs goes off. And so the Texans are going to win this game. It's going to be close though. I mean, 1 point's a little rich as always. I don't like predicting when it's going to be a 1 point game. So I do take the Texans to cover that spread as well.
Yeah, this is one of those games where, going into the year, I think everyone kind of had penciled. Like we all thought that the Bills would be a little bit worse than what we're seeing. And again, last week I think might have just been a little bit of a blip where they kind of unfortunately showed a little bit of more of their true colors. And when they go up against some of these elite offenses, they can start to struggle. And I think this Texans team has an elite offense. And unfortunately, I think that's going to ultimately be the Bills' downfall. Josh Allen is going to keep this game as close as he possibly can. The defense of the Texans, I think, is going to start to give that offense a little bit of problems. I think this is maybe the first game that we'll see Josh Allen kind of have multiple interceptions just because he's trying to just get away with stuff. You know what? Get away with stuff is not the right term. He's trying to force stuff because he needs to try to get the team back into the game. And I think the Texans will ultimately walk away with that. And again, I'm like you. I don't love 1 point spreads because it's just too hard to predict. We see most games end up more than 1 point. So yeah, I will also take the Texans in this one. Next game coming up if you've watched our channel before, you know that this is what we like to refer to as the Domestic Violence Bowl, as we have the Raiders taking on the Broncos. Reason for that being called like that, my mom's a Broncos fan, my dad's a Raiders fan, so air quotes, it's the Domestic Violence Bowl. It's part 1 this year, going
Yep.
into Denver, where the Denver Broncos are -3 point favorites.
Yeah, which I don't get. Like I know the Raiders are banged up right now. They don't have Max Crosby again this week.
Don't have Devonte Adams this
Don't
week.
have Devonte Adams. So I mean it's same sort of boat as last week. But this Denver team, I mean, they somehow beat the Jets last week, even though Bo Nix had negative passing yards in the first half, and they were only able to score 10 points to do it. Like I don't have a lot of faith in this Broncos team. And even with how bad both of these teams have been over the last few years, the Raiders are on an 8 game winning streak in this rivalry right now. And I don't see any reason that the Broncos are going to be able to break that streak. And so I think the Raiders go in there and they keep it going and they win another one against the Broncos.
See, I do think the Broncos are going to ultimately win this game. And I don't really have any great reasons. I just look at two teams right now and I go, sure, both won last week. The Raiders, whenever this team has, a little bit of adversity, or for instance, like when we talked about the Raiders going up against the Panthers, and that was the first week Bryce Young was benched, it was, well, of course, the Raiders were going to lose that game to a backup quarterback who just gets replaced and this sort of thing. This is one of those games where it just kind of has the writing on the wall. Again, Devontae Adams basically requesting a trade this week, and Max Crosby isn't there, and they have, I think, 7 total starters out this week. I think the Raiders are just too banged up. They're going into Denver, which is going to be really tough. It is always a tough place for visiting teams to go and play. And I just think the Broncos, they're going to squeak away with a very close but kind of confident win. And I think they cover that 3-point spread as well. I think once the Raiders start to have distractions creep in, that is when we truly start to see this organization kind of fall apart. Moving forward to the next game, where we have the Arizona Cardinals taking on the San Francisco 49ers, where the 49ers are minus 7-point favorites.
7. My goodness, that's a big spread for a team that's banged up. I mean, still no CMC. I know Jordan Mason has been doing very well in his place. It speaks to this Shanahan style of building a team where it doesn't matter who you are or where you were drafted. If you do what I draw up in the playbook, you're going to be successful.
Yeah.
This Cardinals team is really up and down this season, though. They have a really good week, and then they have a really bad week, and they had a really bad week last week. And so I think this is going to be a good game. That 7-point spread, don't I I don't believe in that at all. I do think the 49ers will win it, but the Cardinals will cover that spread for sure, because it's going to be a good shootout style game, and it's going to be close at the end.
Yeah, I think the 49ers will win. I look at this, I go, if the Cardinals can slow down Marvin Harrison Jr., I think they will have a really good opportunity to kind of run away with this game. I don't think the Cardinals will be able to really do much of anything against this 49ers offense. Again, Mason has been good. Purdy has looked pretty good this season. Jawan Jennings, he's kind of had a good week and then a bad week, so we'll see what's happening there. But they're getting healthier on that offense. They're getting more guys back. So it's one of those things where when they slap that -7 down, I can initially look at that and go, yeah, I understand that. So I will ultimately give the 49ers that -7-point spread to cover that, just because I do think this Cardinals team, they're just not quite ready to go up against this 49ers. And I think that one game earlier against the Rams this year, definitely maybe just a little bit of kind of like a anomaly at this point in the season. And I think the 49ers last week, they kind of got back to more basics. They kind of figured some more stuff out. And so I think they will continue to use this week as kind of like that get right week part 2, and just continue to build off their season. Next game up, we also have in California, where we have the Rams taking on the Packers, where the Green Bay Packers are -3-point favorites.
This has the potential to be a fun one to watch. We've seen both these head coaches, and they're both putting some entertaining product on the field despite having some injuries to deal with. The Packers do have Jordan Love back now. So do with that as you will. I know you're not happy about it, I'm sure.
I couldn't care.
Right? But I don't know, this Rams team, I know they got beat, but Sean McVay's been finding ways to keep them scoring and keep them going, and once they start getting healthy, they're going to be dangerous, and I think McVay's going to be able to find a way to win enough games to keep them in the playoff race when it matters. I think the Rams win this week against the Packers.
I think right now the Rams, their defense is young, but it's still pretty bad at the moment. And even with Jordan Love throwing those 3 picks last week, he still had, I think, over like 400 yards, and he had like 4 passing touchdowns. I think Matthew Stafford will keep this game close, and I think the Rams will cover the spread. But I just don't think they will have enough to ultimately go away and win this game. I think the Packers defense is kind of very middle of the park. Like it's just a kind of defense. It's not great, it's not bad, but I think the Packers the Packers offense is going to be able to do enough to ultimately walk away with this victory. I do think it's going to be close though. I think the Rams will cover that spread because it is in LA, but then again, both LA teams, you don't really have a home advantage. So it is kind of what it is. Going over to our last game before we get to Sunday Night Football is where we have the Giants taking on the Seahawks, where the Seahawks have that minus 7 point spread.
Yeah, this 7 point spread I can understand a little bit more. You know, that Seahawks team, they were fighting with the Lions last week through that game. Like I know they didn't look great on defense, but they were able to put up some points, and the Giants are just awful. You know, even when they can move the ball, they can't score that touchdown. It's only a field goal they ever get. And so I don't really have a whole lot of faith in them. I'm sure Malik Neighbors will have a good day if he's even there. I know he was in the concussion protocol. I haven't looked to see where he's
He's
at on the
out this
injury
week.
report. He's out?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, in that case, then there's nothing for the Giants to look forward to. So the Seahawks will take advantage of this game to take out some aggression over that loss to the Lions last week, I think, and it'll be a bit of a blowout this one. Seahawks will win and obviously cover that spread and then some.
Yeah, last week I basically said I think the Seahawks are pretenders. I don't think their record is who they are.
Hmm.
And I think that Lions loss last week just ultimately kind of showed it. They went up against a real team, and I just don't think the Giants. I've been pretty vocal about this. I don't think the Giants are a good team. I don't think Daniel Jones is a good quarterback, and with Malik Neighbors out, the Giants have nothing. They will not be able to do anything. Like who's Daniel Jones? I bet Daniel Jones will have more passing touchdowns to the Seahawks than he will to his own team. And for that reason, it's just I can't see the Seahawks, keeping this within 7 unless Brian Dable pulls out black magic and puts in Tommy DeVito. I just can't see the Seahawks doing much or the Giants doing much of anything in this game. I think this is an easy win for the Seahawks, covering the spread of that minus 7. Now going to your game of the week where we have Sunday Night Football. The Steelers taking on the Cowboys at Heinz Field. I'm not calling it the other name. I still think it's stupid. But the
I do too.
Steelers are minus 2 point favorites against the Cowgirls.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I expect this to be a tight game. I mean, these two teams always fight it out when they go head to head. You know, Steelers and Cowboys, probably two of the largest fan bases in the NFL, and they've had just a long history-filled rivalry. And this week is going to be interesting because both teams are missing quite a few players. You know, the Steelers, no Alex Highsmith, still no Russell Wilson. The offensive line is banged up with James Daniels now out, so it's going to be rookies starting on the O line. It's going to be messy there. And then the Cowboys as well. They're missing, I believe,
Both of their edge rushers,
both Micah
Demarcus Lawrence
Parsons
and Micah
and
Parsons.
yeah, exactly. And so they're both out. It's going to be interesting to see which team is able to get hold of the momentum in this game. It's it's in Pittsburgh, so it doesn't usually matter who the quarterback is, who the coordinators are. Like this team plays so well in prime time at home. You know I'm going to take my Steelers to win this game. Hands down. And 2 point spread, I think the Steelers will cover that because we got Boswell kicking the ball. So if it comes down to that last minute field goal, he's going to hit it. And I mean, Justin Fields has looked better every week. Last week was the, you know, first time we saw some struggles early on, and then he kind of settled down and took over the game. What we would see last year where, a Justin Fields style play like 3 or 4 times a game when you were watching your Bears. Thus far this season, it seems to be once a game he makes a flub like that, and then he like shakes his head and stops. And so that is promising that he's not doing it over and over each game. I like the Steelers' odds. I've said it before. If they can get this offense rolling earlier in the game and stop just chugging along slowly to start it out, they could be dangerous. It's just Arthur Smith has to find a way to put points on the board early. Either way, this defense will win this game for the Steelers against the Cowboys. At some point, TJ Watt will alter the game. He'll get to Dak Prescott and make that game-changing play like he always does in prime time at home.
Yeah, and this is one of those weird games where I've kind of done a little bit of flip-flopping from both sides, just because when I initially made my pick, I went with the Cowboys, and then I switched to the Steelers, then I switched back to the Cowboys, and now I've switched back to the Steelers because it's just one of those games where you look at this Steelers offense. They basically have an entirely new offensive line. I think they only have two guys that were on their day one starting offensive line out there, but luckily for them, the edge rushes for the Cowboys aren't out there. But the other problem is that the rest of the defense is still out there for the Cowboys. I think Justin Fields, this is going to be one of those games for him where he's going to have to try to do a little bit more because he doesn't have that offensive line. And I think we know the Steelers or the Cowboys corners can give up some big yards, but we also know them to be big time turnover artists. And I think this is going to be a defensive game where both offenses are going to struggle, and I think we're going to see the winner ultimately be the better defense. And again, we've discussed this a few times today. Who has the better defense? It's sure as hell not the Cowboys. And so I do think the Steelers win this one. I do think they will cover the spread this week. But it's going to be a sloppy game. This is going to be one of those games I think we saw from the Steelers for the first two games this year where it's low scoring and we're just kind of going,
I mean, I think it's possible, but, you know, I'm not entirely sure. If I'm being totally honest with you, like last week, we saw this offense get rolling. We know the Cowboys
And
offense.
I'll tell you this. There was weeks
Hmm,
where I saw Justin Fields get rolling for the Bears multiple times.
I know.
And it's just one of those things where it's just it needs to be shown to me for a longer period of time before I can properly go, okay, we've seen it. And again, you went up against
Hmm.
the worst offense or the worst defense in the league last week, or one of the worst
Yep.
defenses in the league, and it took you that long to kind of do what you needed to do. You're going
Yep.
up against a better Cowboys defense.
Oh, I know. I think that was good last week, though. The fact that we lost then, I think, is what's going to be able to settle this team down going into this week.
Yep.
Losing the way they did last week, they can look at that, I think, and go, we can handle the adversity because they very nearly came back in that game. I talked about it in the video I put up earlier this week where it really was three mistakes throughout the entire game by three different guys that ultimately cost them that game. And if they can clean those mistakes up, that's a very different outcome for a game like that, which means as long as they can clean that up, no matter who it is they're playing, they have that opportunity that they could pull that out.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
like I
it,
said, I still think the Steelers are going to win this game. I
yep.
just don't
I
think it's going to be an offensive game. It's going to be classic Steelers football where it's defense,
oh
and
yeah, it's going to be classic Steelers Cowboys. They're never super high scoring
yeah,
games, but I just I don't I'm not looking at this going, oh, it's going to be like a 10-6 game. I think it's going to be more of one of those defensive battles where it's like a 22-19 game. We're going to see some touchdowns and some offense early in the game, I think. It's going to be which defense can turn it up in the last 5 minutes of the game and win that game for their team. I think that's what it's going to come down to is which defense can turn it on at the end to ultimately seal the win.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's like I said, Steelers win, Steelers cover.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. For our Monday night game this week, thank God we only have one, so we don't have to listen to Orlovsky talk incoherently into a microphone. Um, we have the Saints taking on the Chiefs at Arrowhead, where the Chiefs are minus 5.5 point favorites.
Yeah, I mean, the Chiefs keep winning. They did some of their voodoo black magic last week, sacrificed Rashi Rice to the gods, and are now going, okay, now we can go ahead and be that first team to actually go 17-0 and win the Super Bowl. I don't think that's gonna actually happen. I fucking hope it doesn't. But that being said, they find ways to win. And I think against this Saints team that has, after starting out hot, they've been up and down. They've won some tight, gritty battles, but I don't think this will be one of them. I think the Chiefs will find a way to win, whether that's legitimately on their own or with a call late in the game to help them. They'll win this game.
I know where people are coming from with the calls, but it's like, man, like some of the calls are like, I look at that Bengals
It
game, like that was a pass interference. I'm sorry, by the
oh
letter of the law. I know
happened.
you're not, I know you're not critiquing that but it's just I'm more saying like some of the audience for sure. But
Well, uh, I am at the same time though, because what I'm saying is, I know it's not just the Chiefs games. It happens in every game. It happens all over the league. The issue is the referees are making mistakes,
oh
and
yeah, we've talked
something
about
needs to
this
be
so long where it's just the refs need to be like full-time employees where they're doing
exactly,
training during the week and that type of stuff. They need to be accountable for more stuff. But
exactly. Yeah,
yeah, it's the Chiefs. We don't know if Rashid Rice is going to be out fully the entire year. He's going to be getting some more tests done on that knee this week to kind of ultimately determine if it's a tear or not. If it's not a tear and he can come back in like a few weeks, that's big for the Chiefs. But yeah, this Saints team, to me, I've just kind of looked at it and gone, after that hot start to the first few weeks, they just don't really have it. And I think this Chiefs defense is still really, really good, and they're going to be able to apply a lot of pressure on Derek Carr. And we all know what happens when pressure and Derek Carr meet in a football field. There appears to be a lot of soiled underwear going back to the sidelines, and I just don't think this Saints team is going to be able to compete at Arrowhead on a prime time Monday night game. I
yeah.
think the Chiefs walk away with a pretty comfortable victory.
Well, yeah, because I mean, even with Rashi Rice out, you got to remember Travis Kelsey is still there.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, he struggled this year, but
He played better
all
last week.
super, all superstars have their struggles. At some point, Travis Kelsey's going to wake up and he's going to have a big game. And you can't forget the things that Xavier Worthy has done already.
Mm-hmm.
Juju Smith-Schuster had a connection with Patrick Mahomes last time he was there. Like, there's no saying that won't happen. And even if Rashee Rice is out indefinitely, Hollywood Brown still is going to be joining this team at some point this season.
I think he's actually out this year
Oh,
too.
is he on
Yeah, I
the
think
full season IR? I thought he was just on like a 5 game.
I would need to look at that again, but I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure he's out for the season. It's pretty
Okay,
much
even
the
if he is,
Xavier Worthy, start to the year.
yeah. And the Chiefs, they have the opportunity, they have the tools to be able to go out and make a trade for another wide receiver.
Yes.
But the thing with them is they may opt not to because they've got a lot of pieces, a lot of familiar pieces there that have been successful on this Chiefs team in the past. We don't know who's going to be able to come up. They still got guys like Nicole Hardman and I what's his Kareem Hunt, I believe, is back there now as well.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
there's so many guys that could step up and fill that star role very easily when you've got a guy like Patrick Mahomes throwing the football. We saw it with Tom Brady. Sometimes an absolute nobody comes along and the Chiefs, the Patriots were able to make money out of it. The
Yep.
Chiefs do the same thing.
It's that classic phrase of don't bet against Mahomes and Andy Reid. It's
Yep.
basically just went from don't bet against Belichick and Brady to don't bet against Mahomes and Reed. And that's exactly what it is. Even when things look bad, again, the last 2 years, who were the Chiefs' top receivers? The year or 2 years ago, it was Juju. Last year, it was a rookie Rashid Rice. So it's not one of those things where I'm worried about the offense ever. They'll find a way to win. They'll have a loss eventually this season. I don't think they're 17-0. They'll have 2 or 3 of those. One will somehow magically be against the Raiders this year. I don't know how, but again, we said the same thing last year, and the Raiders ended up getting that victory. But that is our game predictions this week. Again, we always do our Thursday game predictions throughout the week, so keep an eye out for that video going into week number 6. But please make sure to like and subscribe and comment on the video, as it always helps out a ton. But for Sterling, I'm Brendan saying peace.